place there to write a comment or two, positive, negative, you know, whatever you want to say. If you want a response to it, we would need to know, you know, how to get back to you. So anyway, one of the things I've learned over the years when you schedule meetings is people's time is important, that we start on time. So I'm really excited to share with the community a project, and as I look back, it has been 16 months that we've been working on this project. Joe doesn't think it's that long, but I started before Joe was brought on to help us. So anyway, I'm going to give you a little quick history and not consume much time in doing it. I wrote it out so I wouldn't forget anything, so please bear with me. 16 months ago, a small group representing the city, users other than Rotary, and Rotary started working on community building options under the assumption that doing nothing to the building was not an option. This small group consisted of myself as the facilitator, Terry Richards representing the city, Vicki Young and Perry Rask representing building users, Jim Kuhn, a citizen at large, and Rotarian Gary Anderson. Dick Wold represents the American Legion Hall Remodel Committee, which is a separate project sort of going hand in hand with the community building. But he was on the committee representing the American Legion Hall interest. And then from time to time, others would drop in and give us input and helped out. This meeting is designed to present the feasibility study results to date for the community building. However, since both buildings are connected, some information that Joe will present will involve the American Legion Hall. Moving on, this small group obtained a $5,000 Ford Family Foundation grant, which is funding the feasibility study. The feasibility study is being conducted by HGE Architects and Engineers, and with that, please welcome Joe Slack, HGE's principal architect. His wife is accompanying him, Gloria. Welcome, Gloria.
Claudia.
Claudia, I'm sorry. We are here today to review the results of the feasibility study for the community building and get public comment. The feasibility results to date have not been submitted to the Parks Commission or the city. This is a committee effort and it's a committee presentation. In order to establish some order, we have provided a printed form that includes an agenda with timelines, written comment space, and volunteer opportunities. The next phase, if we get that far, will be fundraising. So that's a phase that we could use some help with. So please provide your name and contact information. As the presentation progresses, if you have questions, Joe would like to have you raise the question as the subject is being presented. That way he has a good chance to get an exchange of ideas. So we don't want to limit the input, but we would hope you can we hope to complete the meeting in about 2 hours. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Before Joe, you've got the stage. So any
Just
questions?
an observation, John.
Sure.
The Port Commission starts at 6,
Mm-hmm.
so that's just 1 hour away, and there are people here that have to go to that.
Okay, well, we'll understand that you have multiple demands on your time. I don't want to rush this. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to contribute. So with that, Joe, thank you very much. And it's yours.
Thank you. Well, good evening, folks. Like John said, my name is Joe Slack. I'm an architect with a company called HGE, Architects and Engineers and Planners out of Tuesday. And so I've known John actually for a long, long time. He was in the building product trade industry for a number of years. And so, gosh, I think it was in the mid-'80s or early '90s, somewhere in there. So it's been fun getting reacquainted and working with him and working with all of you as well. This is probably our 4th or so get-together. Some of you that are on the committee, you've seen these slides before, so I won't bore you too much, but those that haven't, again, please, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I'll answer them as I can. Folks in the back, you may have a little trouble seeing it, but there's some seats up here if you need to move forward. So, like John mentioned, feasibility study, that encompassed what we call needs assessment and concept design. So, in sort of summary terms, so needs assessment means we spent some time pouring through the building as it sits now, identified various systems and issues with the building that need to be addressed to extend the life of the building, to make it more functional and more user-friendly, so to speak. And so we did that portion. We also put cost estimates on taking care of those shortcomings. And then subsequent to that, we then spent time with the committee reviewing what the various needs are of the facility to make it function better. And so, and then based on that, we went into some concept design. So I'm going to run through those relatively quickly, but again, if you have any questions, let me know. So here's our project site. The big white rectangle, that's the community building. I think we had a date on it that was early 70s, vintage. And it sits right next door to the American Legion building, of course, and north is up. The school is across the street. The credit union is kitty corner on the same block. And this is Dave's park project. What do you refer to?
Peace Park.
Peace Park, cleared off quite a bit. So our property is about where that red hidden line is. So here's a photograph from, we're looking at the north side, the north entry. It's on the north side of the building, and so it's primarily in the shade a lot. And you'll see some close-up photos of some of the problems with that. So of course, the Legion building sits right between. There's a kind of a funky sort of margin between the two buildings. It's covered. There is an ability to make it secure. You're not really inside, but then you're not really outside because it's got a roof over it. But it is kind of an open air transition space between the two. It's serving as a means of getting into the building from a ramp with a ramp.
It's a very breezy breezeway.
Yeah, I would imagine. So here's some other photos of the building. What we call a pre-engineered metal building, meaning it came into the site as a kit and bolted together, and then subsequently insulation was secured to the frame, some subframing, and then metal panels secured on top of it. It's, these type of buildings are mostly used for warehouse, shop space. They're getting a little more sophisticated over the years, making them a little bit more functional for office space. But mostly they're for big open spaces. When you start putting a lot of rooms in them, they lose their economy, and that's when you go back to more traditional type of construction. So this is the west side where that little exit out there was enclosed to provide a little more weather protection. This is the east side. Really high windows, kind of unusual. Allows some daylight into the building, but it doesn't allow you to have any connection to the outside, meaning any view windows. Like these windows here, in the window in the door, you can see out and have a sense of where you are, as opposed to windows up high just letting in daylight. So buildings are friendlier, more pleasant to work in when you have a sill height that's kind of a normal, traditional sill height. The front, this is north side again. Because it's on the north side, it gets wet, and even though the rain's not pounding on it like south-facing building faces, what they do, but on the north side it doesn't dry out as well. And so we have a lot of rust that's occurring on that north side. There's this little projecting little awning that protects the entry, and that has to be removed and replaced in its entirety. It's really rusted through. And then we have the front door of the building that when it was used, I think, more often as a theater, everything was kind of blacked out. And so it's a really ominous kind of entry into the building space. You can't see into it. People can't see out of it very well. And then, of course, we have all these steps to get to it, which from an ADA standpoint doesn't work. We have this ramp that is posing as a accessible ramp, but it's got issues with it as well in terms of ADA compliance. There's some real specific design requirements to make things ADA, and that has some shortcoms. It would need to be replaced. Inside the building, here's kind of a dark photo, but you can see the high windows on the west or on the east side. This is as architects, we always kind of scratch our head and stuff. Why didn't they move that door over to align with the that's just the way it goes. So then we have this is the heat, a Resner electric heater, which again you'd find in a shop or warehouse space. They heat the space. That's in terms of comfort. They're noisy. They're kind of distracting, and so you would want to see something else for the type of use you all have planned for the building or have done in the building. Here's our stage. It really is a stage. It's 3 feet off the ground, and it functions fine. We don't have a big lot of room above it, of course, but we need to have that ADA compliant too, and that's 3 foot high. That means 36 feet of ramp with a landing, and so it really is a little problematic with stages that are that high off the ground. So here's a floor plan of the existing building. So here's the steps that I showed you, and here's that sort of vestibule space. This space really provides connection between the American Legion building and their kitchen, most importantly, to get into the community building when they have functions that have food. And so we got a pretty good sized kitchen here that can feed it, so they really need this connection. There's not a lot of need for folks using the facility to go this way. It's mostly for this kitchen to be able to serve the community building. And then there's a couple small restrooms down here that exist. This is a really funky women's restroom with 2 toilets in one little room. I don't really understand. I can't imagine 2 people being in there, but maybe so, I don't know. And then we have the men's restroom. And this right up here is the green room for performances, where performers have a place to change and get ready to perform. This doesn't show the stage very well, but the stage comes out to this line right here. There's some steps on the public side of the proscenium arch on this side, and then behind the arch on the east side. So what else do we have? Oh, so I talked about the windows. The floor could use some repair work. Pretty much every entry has ADA issues. Of course, we have ADA issues with the restrooms. The ceiling has a ceiling not all that dissimilar to this, where the insulation is laying on the ceiling tiles, and it looks great for the first few years, but then over time, that insulation and the weight of it just causes them to start to sag. So we'd like to put in a new ceiling. The roof has some minor leaks, but it does have leaks, and so we're looking at reskinning the roof and painting / reskinning the metal on the walls as well. So this is I'm kind of chunking through this pretty good. This is a spreadsheet on what it costs to deal with those needs assessment items that have been identified. So we have a few things on the site work, but up here, well, the building's about 4,000 square feet. If I include that little connecting vestibule, it's 100 square feet, so it's about 4,100 square feet. If you were to replace that building as it sits now, without changing the footprint or the number of bathrooms or making the vestibule bigger or whatever, that's roughly a little bit south of 1.9 million. That's what, using today's dollars. Doesn't include land costs or anything like that. It's about 1.85 or 86. So some sites, there's a few site things. mainly access into the building to comply with ADA. And then we have an allowance for removing asbestos. We've got some rebuild the restrooms, provide stage access with a ramp, replace the awning in the front. I did plug in adding an entry vestibule. I'll talk about that in a minute. Rebuild that connecting vestibule, and then siding replacement and roofing replacement. Replace exterior doors, window replacement, interior finishes allowance to retreat the floor to improve the acoustical performance of the space for performances, and new ceiling space and paint, those kind of things.
Joel?
Yes.
Steve, would that include replacing the wood, the simulated wood?
Yeah, the wall panel
All
stuff.
panel
Yeah,
would
it would.
come
Yeah,
out?
we kind of be just a new, fresh interior feel to it. Oh, I do have ceiling replacement identified as acoustical wall treatment. And then the plumbing would be part of that restroom rebuild number. But we do have mechanical improvements. And what I would imagine is possibly something like a large heat pump that would serve, that would be ducted. You wouldn't hear it, and provide ventilation and heat as well as cooling. And then we've got some electrical upgrades to do. The panels, the electrical panels are really, they need to be replaced. They're pretty worn out. And so that totals just under $600,000. We have a little contingency, 10%. We're at $659,000. And then we always have to include soft costs for whenever you do project budgets. That's to provide design, engineering, and architectural work. We plugged in an allowance for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. That's like chairs, window furnishings, tables, and the like. Special inspections required for construction these days. Of course, we need to deal with permits and fees and have some dollars for that. And then additional soft cost contingency to cover those things that we don't have listed. And so we end up with a subtotal of development cost of $169,000, and total is about $830, or $202 square foot. That's a major, what we call that a major upgrade on the building. So then I'll start moving into what we discussed in terms of improving the function of the building and improve the usability of it and make it more accessible as well as more comfortable. And so this is kind of small print, but this is, I just have one page of this, so don't worry. I'm listing the spaces that are in the building now and the spaces that are desired in the building or needed in the building to make it more functional. And so the first item is multi-purpose room. What we talked about are group meetings, lectures, musical performances, classes, physical activities, dance, movies, etc. Good acoustical performance needed, and the like. And so other uses include tool sales, quilting events, Christmas bazaar, weddings, and theaters. So it's a real mixed bag of what we want to do in there. So it has a lot of different requirements for such, and so we want to make sure it has that flexibility. The size of it, based on our discussion with the committee, is fine. Space has a capacity for about 200 of the tables and chairs, so we didn't mess with the size of the big room. The stage, the size of the stage was fine, but again, we have that ADA issue. We get on top, get up to the stage. The green room, there was a discussion about getting rid of the green room, but really with the performance part of the use of the space, we wanted to keep the green room in, so that remained. We do need an AV closet that it doesn't have now. And then the men's and women's restroom, there's a lot of discussion about that. We could just turn those into 2 single-user bathrooms, but from a code standpoint, if the American Legion Hall is not open and accessible, you need to have more than that. And so on the men's side, would there be a urinal and a toilet? It has that now, but obviously people are going to lock the door. It's not a multi-user space. And then the women's would be a normal 2-stall room with a handicap stall and a regular stall. And so that, we don't have the room for that. And then we also talked about having a toilet room available to performers. So if there is a performance going on, they need to use the facility. They don't have to come out into the seating area and use the restroom. So there'll be a restroom available on the back of the proscenium arch for their access. And we did talk about entry vestibule with the big, pretty fierce northwest winds we get in the summertime, having a vestibule, meaning a airlock where you come through a door and then that door closes and you come through the next door to get into the space. It provides a little more comfort for the people in the room, having, it provides some thermal break, but it also provides a little buffer for those folks that are sitting in the back of the room. I think I busted through that. So right now there's about 4,100 square feet, like I mentioned. With these additional increases, like in the restroom and the vestibule, we need about 4,800 square feet, and so we have about a 700 square foot bust, so to speak, that we need to find some more room. So this is the existing, I'll already show you the existing plan. So this is the demolition plan, and then I'll show you what we have planned. So we are talking about rebuilding the stage, getting it down closer to the ground so we can have a shorter ramp, 2 steps up, 12 inches or 14 inches or so. We would rebuild these bathrooms, but we utilize the funding that's intact there, and we take this vestibule out and rebuild it. So this shows the community building and the American Legion building. And like John mentioned, this American Legion building is a work in progress right now. We haven't got to the point that the community building is, but this reflects what's been, what the folks want to do in here. Dick and his committee is to expand the size that right now there's a kind of a canvas space right here, and we actually expand that room up. So the yellow represents new construction. So the yellow is what we add on to the building. So we would basically take that little vestibule and stretch the whole length of the community building, and that would be, we create our restrooms, some chair storage to serve multi-purpose room. Right now the chair storage is under the stage, which is a real common thing in schools. They do that, but it's also a little problematic where they have to crawl underneath the stage to pull stuff out. And so we would, nowadays we have, they make it pretty simple with carts. Tables and chairs can be on carts, easy to push in, so we have a room to accommodate that. And then American Legion building needs storage, and they need a utility room to mitigate the utility room they're taking out. And so these 2 spaces would feed the American Legion building. And this would really be kitchen service entry, this space. They can come right in the kitchen with delivery. I'll probably come back to this slide. So here's close up on the community building. So again, we have a new front door. Oh, I didn't share the thought on the entry out front. Yeah, so we would make these buildings a little bit more connected and a little bit easier flow between the two, and kind of provide a little bit continuity between the buildings. Is we would have a connecting plaza or walk that would go the whole length of the 2 buildings from one end to the other end. And then we would build just one ramp, one ADA ramp that would serve both buildings. It also is in the middle, so that if they have hand carts to get service supplies into the kitchen, they can utilize that too. So it would be elevated up at the level of both buildings have to be really close in floor elevation. They're within an inch or 2. And so that could accommodate, this plaza could accommodate both buildings. And then we have new stairs to serve directly into the Legion building, and we'd have stairs at that end that would serve the community building. Poke this out. We're about 30 inches off the sidewalk level. We pooched that thing out because there were comments about having some space out in front of the community building for milling around before folks actually come into the building. So trying a little bit more breathing room in front of that door, and actually that could be a kind of a seating wall as well. So,
Joe,
yeah,
you've had falls out there in that area
I'm sure you have.
with weather, et cetera. So could we have handrails?
Yeah, I'm running this new software on this, and I'm kind of the one that's doing it. We have a couple other people in the office that have a little more command of it, so I haven't figured out how to draw handrails
Okay.
yet. So when we get to the final design, yeah, we'll have handrails.
Okay.
Then both stairways.
Yeah. So again, front door, new vestibule, new falls out in front, seating. This just shows chairs, no tables, and then we have a platform that's 12 or 14 inches off the ground, and then that storage that's under there would be fed and served by this room. We preserved the green room, and what we did here was we convert the boys' bathroom into a custodial room. We really need a place for mop buckets and those kind of things. We'll enter the custodial housekeeping room right here, and then we have this toilet room. Basically, just lift the floor up even with the platform. So this door would serve this bathroom. The bathroom could be for performers, whether it's a band or a play or what have you. That actually was pretty efficient use of the plumbing we have. We won't have to do any saw cutting. Whenever you have slab on grade, you're always going to saw cut sewer. So we'd be in pretty good shape for that. And then our new restrooms will just fill this margin about 10 feet wide, the whole length of the building. Men's restroom here, women's here. There really is no magic on which one's where. And we have this short hallway that feeds that, but we'd also provide a door. The exit out of this end of the building would be down the end of the hall. And we did, this kind of came up during our last meeting, it'd be nice to have a covered, this more covered so folks can actually stand out here and the weather's not so great. But also opens the door to future development that could potentially happen out here in this kind of wind-protected leeward side, south-facing space that we always like to see and always like to see develop. You know, our buildings are natural windbreaks, so if you're lucky and have the opportunity to have south-facing open space, then if you can get access to it. I could see this becoming a lot more developed as time goes on. We did also talk about another exit up at the top on the east side. Our last meeting, there was some discussion about adding another exit up there.
Joe?
Yeah.
I think you just answered the question. We had talked about that lower right-hand exit being between the restrooms, which is problematic from view lines.
Yeah.
And then your observation that that's a nice outdoor park barbecue area kind of leads to the
Yeah.
location that you just said, so.
Yeah, this whole area, I mean, this
Yes.
everybody
Very,
has
very
south-facing
nice back
spaces at their house or where they work, but you just know that these turn into really nice areas. A couple comments about what we're doing design-wise here. As I mentioned, we're expanding the kitchen all the way to the end wall, but then we want to have this space be connected more so to this building also. And we haven't really fleshed that out yet, but there's an opportunity here to have another door out this end of this room that could serve a connecting walkway plaza space so that there could be a way to really open things up. There's no way out, there's no doors on the south side of this building for some reason. We also are looking at opening this wall up for bigger events in this building that can kind of spill into this kind of T-shaped space.
So if I'm in the American Legion building and going to go into the community building, how do I get there without going outside?
Well, that's right, and I mentioned that's really not, that hasn't been a requirement, other than
We
to
do it all
serve-
the time
when you have
for
a
the
function
bazaars
here-
and...
What's that?
we seem to do that a lot, at least when I'm there. We're going back and forth when we had the bazaars or Christmas.
You can still do that, can't you, Joe, right through the...
Yeah,
Pretty much
Through
the
the
same.
kitchen service area, but aren't you now going to be going right through the end of the kitchen?
And you can't do that for a handicap entrance.
I think it needs to be fleshed out some more. I don't think it's totally resolved. Right now, the discussion has been that when this building's closed, there's really no reason for anybody to go over there.
Right.
And when you're having a function here, the function's in here, and so the only people that are doing this are people that are working the function. And so that's how that, whether that's true or
A lot
not,
of servers.
Not true.
it's not true.
Not true.
So there's an easy fix, and that's to just slide this over and have a connected hallway, or make this fatter so people could flank the kitchen and get in. It's not a big deal. It just takes a little bit out of somebody's storage space. Yeah, so this door, if you have a big, huge blowout function here where you're using the entire facility, folks are in this space and this space, that's why this door here could make sense where you could have this kind of connecting walkway to the two spaces.
Yeah, but you're going outside, and that could be four.
Well, exactly, right. So here's a cross-section, pretty fundamental really. This is the existing shell of the building, and we rebuild the building envelope with code level insulation, replace the roof, add rigid insulation on the roof deck, and put the metal on top of that so that actually we have more opportunity to do a little more creativity, or have a little more creativity with the ceiling appearance. The platform is going to be down lower considerably, so we actually have more room in the stage for performances. And then here's this infill space, and this is the Legion building. Here's the elevations of the building. So here's, this is our community building right here. There's the service access to the kitchen. Here's the elevated seating wall for the community building, and then here's the connecting plaza. I threw in a flagpole just recently as a way to mark that space even more. And this is up for discussion, but I'd like, the buildings are so different architecturally. I mean, they're just not the same kind of building. And so what do? We wanted to make them the same. It'd be nice to have some elements that are common. The plaza will do that. You could possibly put siding on the metal building to match the Legion building, but I don't know if that's all that advisable. We probably just stick to metal siding, but what I am suggesting is that we tear off the covered porch that's in the Legion building and rebuild it to match what we do on this side, and that may provide a little bit of continuity between the two. This is the east wall. Remember those windows are up high, and so we drop those down so they're at a 3-foot sill height. And what it means is that when you're in that space, you just have a lot more connection to the outside. There's our second exit out of that space as well. And then here's the other two elevations. Here's the existing Legion building, and then this is that margin infill space with the restrooms. Put a couple obscure glazing type windows in the bathrooms as well as in that restroom hall. We talked about punching that hall right at the outside, but it really it doesn't work all that great for sight lines and whatnot. We just didn't have it just serve the restrooms. And here's that little covered entry off the back end. Here it is again on the south side. So there could be a door here. We could actually provide a covered walkway that will connect those two, which might be rather attractive.
Is it cost prohibitive to change the pitch on the one building?
On the metal building?
On the metal building, and, because that's an awful low pitch and invites leakage, and a little bit to bring the elevation up, pitch that roof a little bit more.
Yeah, do something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do that, but probably just replace the building. Because it's
Because
as part of the
we're gonna-
superstructure, I don't think you could add that much weight
Yeah.
to get that. It'd be pretty tough chore. So here's some three-dimensional drawings. This is kind of a bird's eye view of the plaza. Here's our ADA ramp. Yes, so I'll have the handrails. I'll figure out how to draw them by the time we get to the point. And here's the stairs up to the Legion building. Stairs kind of flank it to the left, to the community building, just so we have this nice margin out in front. Surface entry, and that's the kind of more down at street level view of the front of the building. Yeah.
Now, in front of the community building, where it comes out, that looks like an accident hazard to me
Does it?
without railings.
Yeah, maybe there needs to be a back to the bench or something. Or maybe we don't want benches, maybe we just want a rail. That's
Yeah, I think the rail.
totally fine. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
It's just a thought, since there's the plantings there north, maybe the back of the rail could be a narrow plant area. I mean, the back of the rail, back of
That's
the
right
bench.
along here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just as a
absolutely,
thought.
absolutely. We have a little bit of planter space here, planter space here, of course, the side. But yeah, this definitely can be worked over. And here's the back side. Here's that covered exit out of the community building with the roof coming through, what we call low slope roofs. It has pitch, it's not flat, but we have a gutter line out here on the edge. There's the bathrooms, this edge right here. This is another view. Oh, this shows that exit out of the building on the east side with the larger windows. And then cost, this is a summary of cost. So the building, scope of the building is about 4,900 square feet, 4,925, that's original 4,000 plus the commons vestibule, which was 100, and then the additional infill being 750, and then we had 75 square feet for that, adding on to the entry vestibule, so we're at 4,925. We've got more site improvements than the needs assessment just because we're building all that connecting plaza work. And then the building improvements, this is from the needs assessment. We get a little bit of credit because some of the needs assessment work we wouldn't do, like we wouldn't build the 35, 40-foot long ramp to serve the platform because now it's much smaller. And a couple other things. And then here's the cost on the infill. So we're at 866, and with the contingency, we're about $953,000. We're about 194 foot. And then again, we need to make sure we plug in development costs or what we call soft costs. And we end up, those are at 220. And so we have a price tag right now of 1.173 or $1,173,000. So a new building of similar size, we've debated this more than once. If you take that square footage and you multiply it by today's construction costs and you plug in a percentage, I think I used 30% instead of 20. This percentage right here, 23%, represents what these numbers are in relation to the construction costs. But so this site's building times today's current construction cost plus development costs, we're about 2.4. So it's not quite half. It's approaching half, but it's not there quite yet. So I think that's what I have for that. Oh, a couple more.
Joe, what would be the life expectancy of the building?
Well, 50 years is a sort of a standard number we use. If you spend that kind of money to upgrade your building, you get a lot more life out of it. You know, you have to know you still have to paint your building, you still need to repair a roof or replace roof. You still have to maintain it, but we kind of go out all these things as lasting a long time.
Well, there's a bit more to that answer. The building right now does not comply with today's requirements. They've changed dramatically from the 70s to now for both seismic and for wind. And of course, both buildings are in the inundation zone. So if in fact that ever happens, they're gone anyway. Joe's correct that the improvements life would be about 50 years, but neither building can be expected really structurally to survive any major trauma at all at this time. And so that becomes part of the tipping point where do you keep putting $10 saddles on $5 horses, or do you change horses? It's a complex question.
Yeah.
I noticed that you had both refinishing the floor and a sizable HVAC system. In-floor heating?
Yeah, that'd be great, but I didn't plug that kind of number in. It would be a little bit more. I think I don't remember what I had for the flooring.
Is it the heat or warm? You're
For
warm all
mechanical. I had like a central air
Uh-huh.
furnace,
Uh-huh.
likely a heat pump, compressor unit outside, but you'd add $5 or $10 a square foot to the mechanical system to do in-floor heat, but more importantly, you have to tear out the slab. Or you'd have,
You?
oh yeah, or you'd have to add,
Trenches.
this much more slab to the
Okay.
building, so it'd be pretty tough. New construction, those are great. The only, for commercial buildings, they are a little tough. You still have to deal with ventilation, because they just provide radiant heat. We're working on a school building right now with floor heat, and we have operable windows. And we have windows with motorized operators on them to make sure we comply to code. So, but floor heat's great. Without a doubt.
Joe, would the windows on the east side be operable?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of operable windows, so yeah, absolutely. And
I think one of the other categories, or one of the other issues that comes up is that building is not used a ton. I think if it were nicer and more conducive to be used, it probably would be. But you run into that question of, do you build a $3 or $4 million building that's used a half a dozen times a year? There has to be some balance there as well. And so it is a tough decision, I think.
I just threw in this slide, I ran across it and kind of refreshes my brain. So this is, from an architect's standpoint, designing buildings and from start to getting ready to start construction. We spent some time in the pre-design phase. That's where we did site investigation, condition assessment, programming, and then we jumped into preliminary design phase, what we call concept design. And so we're in this realm right now. But once you get past that point with funding, then you would enter a construction document phase, and then you'd end up getting ready to go out to bid. So it kind of just helps explain how we work. So this is the last slide, and so the next steps, I owe John a kind of a written, assembled booklet of our design drawings as well as our cost estimates and narrative, but we're about there. And then additional presentations as needed, and then the rest is kind of self-explanatory. Secure funding, finalize the design, deal with the railings, what was the other, have more discussion about that connecting passage from the Legion building into the community building, and then bidding and construction would be after that.
So you might address quickly what the business relationship is between your firm and the American Legion project.
What is?
Your business relationship, which is relatively new, and you're continuing, but
Yeah.
it's under a different time, basically a different time.
It is, yeah, we have,
Dick is here now, too.
Yeah. Dick Wolf.
well, we just formally got approval a week or so ago and we've actually been jumping into it prior to that. And so we need to meet with the Legion folks here for too long and go over some design ideas that we've kind of as a result of the efforts they've done in the kitchen, and then also ideas that I mentioned earlier about connecting to the outside and I'm being rather bold to suggest tearing this off. I need to get some okie dokie or some head nod or something. So we have those kind of things I've just taken the liberty of jumping into. So Then we will kind of bring that up to the level of this, and then you kind of have a package deal if you wanted to still package it together. The scope on the Legion building is much smaller than the community building.
And just to throw out another whole set of ideas, we were successful in obtaining the property between the American Legion Hall and 101 on 11th Street, which for many years was just covered in trash. So the trash is gone, the house will be gone, as soon as Mike and I find a place to take it. And you start thinking it through on that parcel as to what would work for a park. And Ann came up with the name Peace Park. There's a whole bunch of ideas, but there's two things that you can't really fix. One is the noise, and the other is the hazard to children from 101. So that starts you thinking a whole new concept. Something like the library, smaller than Florence's community building, but something like the library here in town as a multi-purpose community center on the Peace Park property with these two buildings. At some point, their lifetime is over, and then they could become the park and parking.
Dave, didn't you just say that because where this building is, because of the tsunami issue, that it wouldn't be really a good idea to put a new building there? So aren't you putting a new building in
Well,
where you're saying you shouldn't?
It's a public building, but it's not an essential facility, so it's not prohibited. And as Mike Murphy used to put it, after the big one, you got 300 years to do whatever you want. It's debatable. If it were police or fire or city hall, you're absolutely correct, you can't do it.
Well,
But
I'm not saying can't, I'm saying you shouldn't, because you said
Well-
you shouldn't put it there, a new one there, because of that location.
it's,
Well, it's still kind of the same location, so you shouldn't put it there.
yes, and the same argument could be made for the library and everything else downtown. So we don't have enough elevated property. We do actually, but doesn't have city infrastructure.
City of Coos Bay has the same conundrum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you speak to funding sources? This it doesn't sound clean to me in terms of funding sources. So this group is looking at money for the community building, and then there is a different group with the Legion Hall. It just commingling money. I used to work on federal grants. I just have a problem with commingling those funds, and how does that stay clean?
Sure. I don't know if I can answer that one. I mean, we can strike a line wherever, but where it gets fuzzy is in between the two buildings. You got this chunk that is serving this space, this chunk that's serving this space, this chunk that's serving that space,
So each of those, so for the community center, the common areas, and the Legion Hall, what are the funding sources and the oversight for all of it?
yeah, I don't think we know.
Yeah, I think that is one of the next big questions. It is this facilitator's position that we've got to start with something from a design standpoint. And when I look at the community building, I want to turn immediately because it is a very ugly situation. So as a facilitator, my concentration was on the community building. And there is that common space that will be served by both. So funding really hasn't been a hot issue with our committee yet. Whatever we do with these buildings have to be approved by first the Parks Commission and then the city. Now, if the two approve of a concept drawing, design, then we can sit down and start talking about, okay, how are we going to straighten out which goes first or second? Do we run them together? Do we not? And I think that's a bigger question once we get beyond the design thing. I do know, in going to one of the Ford Family Foundation grant seminars, that their max for construction, I think, is $250,000 grant. If we have 2 projects, that's 500. If we have 1, we have 250. So there's maybe some arguments.
But that 250 would go here and 250 could, I just am, it's like, what if, for whatever reason, one side separates from the other?
Uh-huh.
And I'm not talking in terms of design and doing that. I get stuck on who's paying for what, and are those funding sources, are they gonna add additional requirements or criteria? And what if they don't? I mean, it's really.
It is a big question. That's why at the bottom of that form, we're gonna need help there. And so anybody who has any experience with that, I mean, I have been in construction all my life. I understand Joe's drawings and some of the budgeting. I have never been on a fundraiser to support a public building. And so we're gonna need some help there. And so that, I'm sure it's not a satisfactory answer, but it's really all, it's all I would have to offer at this stage. And
the problem I'm hearing is that it wouldn't really be like having 2, if there were grants, 2 grants for $250,000. The scope of the Legion Hall is $100,000, for example. It's significantly less than, so you can't, all of that would have to stay, whatever you got for the Legion Hall has to be of the Legion Hall, unless you were to combine the whole thing, which would drop your initial amount back down.
Right.
To that one.
Well, right now, Joe is finishing what we contracted him to do with the Ford Family Foundation, $5,000 grant. Dick Walt's committee, who heads up the American Legion project, it is a smaller project, and that's being funded separately. It's not part of the grant money. So, but that is a project. We're going to have to straighten that out. I don't have an answer for you.
When you went to the Ford Foundation meeting, where was it?
It was actually at the OSU Extension office here.
I was in the second cohort of Ford Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And I know that for the county, when we had functions, you know, when we were all in Gold Beach, we went to the fairgrounds and everything was, when we came here, it was like, oh my God, no wonder people think Port Orford doesn't, you know. It was an embarrassment to have these people, business people and all kinds of stuff, and coming here. Anything that we can do so that it is more appealing.
Professional or something.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good question that you're asking. We just, like John said, we got to figure it out, because right now the construction costs include all this, and it's benefiting the new build. And so, do we draw a line around that and have this as an alternate bid, the part that's serving the Legion Hall, so there's a clear delineation of what these 3 spaces cost? I mean, that's something, we do that kind of stuff all the time, but we need to just know where to draw the line. But right now, our construction numbers cover all this, and they cover all that, plus everything that's happening in the community. So,
And the liability, if something happens in that stretch of things.
what's that?
I said the liability. Now I'm just thinking everyday liability. What if something happens in there? Which side?
Well, my understanding is the city of Port Orford owns both.
Well, they're both city-owned.
Yeah, so,
And so the ownership is, you know, it makes a lot of sense just to package one big project and see what you can do, because it's less costly for mobilization, demobilization to do it all at once.
yeah.
But you guys aren't getting the same, going back and then I'll quit. You aren't getting the same funders.
I don't know who.
We don't know that.
At this stage, that decision hasn't been made.
does the American Legion have a funding source that's more governmental?
No.
Or?
No, neither one of us have a funding source. All we have done is establish two committees. A committee for the renovation of the Legion Hall and a committee for the renovation of the community hall. Now, those are two separate committees. They don't meet together. They're working on it.
Okay.
So now the community building hired Joe. We decided that we thought, okay, since this is doing that, those two buildings coming together and working together, they should, because you have to have one to serve the other, would be a good idea for us to also hire Joe. But Joe is going to come back now and look at what we've been doing. And then when we get this done, we will come up with specifically what is the Legion Hall and responsibilities, and specifically what is the community building responsibilities. And that's our plan right now. And then we would go out for whatever funding we can find. And we don't know what we have no idea.
And some of them may come with, you know, all these.
Did not accept in Joe's original proposal was like colored renditions, which I think there's a lot of things you could do with colors on another building to dress it up.
Yeah, yeah. Just somebody driving through, it's like, oh, it's the same old building. Because the outside doesn't look that much different.
This will look.
But when we're having a event, the crappy, nobody cared what the outside looked like. The event was inside, and there was over 200 people in there.
And
And
that's
it
all
served its purpose.
Yeah, but things are all different there.
Yeah.
It's like, but if you wanted to bring somebody new, or like the cohorts coming here, oh God, what do you know?
It's embarrassing.
Sally, you got a question for Dick?
You know, John, I really think that what Joe has done here, if you take a look at that front, and you take a look at what he's done with the steps and what he's done with the handicapped entrances, he has made that come together. That's got a lot more attractive. If you could just go back, I don't know if he's got a picture right now, you can put next to that of what we now have.
I hope he does.
I'm not sure that the shape of the buildings and what you've got right now needs to change that much after what he's done with that whole
What we could do,
entry. It's great, I think.
thank you. What we could do, I call them a cowboy front, but we could actually extend this parapet
I
up,
was just thinking about
have it
that.
come straight across.
It would
With
hide
the
the
words,
pitch of the roof.
you know, Port Orford Community Building or whatever, and maybe get rid of that sort of flat
A
frame.
facade,
metal
a
roof.
facade of
Yeah.
some,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, probably wouldn't be that big of a deal.
And you could put like concrete board, hardy board or so.
Yeah, I just have to be careful of that. The thing is, with stranger metal buildings, they're just designed differently than wood frame, and they have a lot more, they move a lot more. And so when you start trying to put materials that you'd find on a building, then on a traditionally built building, they may have stress cracks, and we may have problems with nails popping or whatever, so I kind of, my gut feeling is to stick to the type of construction that building's designed for.
It's proven.
But a facade would add,
Yeah, I think that,
tie that in a lot.
I hadn't thought of that, though. Somebody
A
said,
purpose.
like that.
How about a cupola instead?
What was that you said? Somebody said it looked like this.
Well, I call it a cowboy front, where you have the western, you know, straight front wall with columns down below. You know, the smart board I've drawn is when you come up, it comes straight across,
So
go
you
back
wouldn't see the
down.
pitch.
What's that?
You wouldn't see the pitch of the roof.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be this nice base, you know, provide actually some room for some signage.
Yeah.
You know, and it would actually be stand a little more proud to this building. Right now, this has a really steep pitch, this is a little taller. This is kind of downplayed, so that might help.
What if you had events in there?
Would the wind be a problem though?
Well, we'd have
Probably
to
have to
design
keep
it
it-
so it would,
Very
whoa,
short.
we don't want it to bend.
But with that low pitch, it wouldn't have to be very high
No,
to hide if that was the main goal, to hide the pitch of the roof. I mean, it would always be whenever it drops.
yeah, I think that looks really nice.
Yeah,
More work,
winds would take it away.
Right.
Yeah. Airborne.